Yes, you know, a long time ago in a galaxy far away, and this would have been back in probably 1990, I'm trying to remember when this would have been, early 90s, 92, 93, I'm thinking back, could have been 94. The original Solobaric woofer came out from Stillwater Designs. And the concept behind the original Solobaric woofer that was actually called a Solobaric was, okay, how can we take a woofer that normally needs about 1.5 to 1.75 of cubic airspace to produce bass in a car? How can we take that woofer, redesign it, and come out with one that would work in a lot less airspace? He thinks I can't see, but my eye has this, I took my thingy, so I'll be okay. So the thing about it is, that's the concept for the original Solobaric, or at least as people know, Solobaric was the original round woofer that a 12-inch driver would work in a 0.88 cubic foot box. Now, how did Steve make that happen? Well, what he looked at is everyone's heard of isobaric, or maybe you haven't, isobaric boxes, where basically in an isobaric box, you take two identical woofers, you put them either face to face, or you put it cone to magnet, and the woofers work in unison, but they're coupled by this small chamber of air, either face to face like this or magnet to cone, and they work in unison. And when you do that, what you're basically doing is doubling the mass and doubling the motor. And when you do that, what it allows you to do is you can basically use a much smaller enclosure and get the same response. So in other words, real good, smooth, deep bass. You can get that same response out of a much smaller physical enclosure than one driver by itself. And what's ironic about it is if you go back even further than that, before it was called Solobaric, the original KICKER comp woofer back in those days, I mean, there were woofers you could buy to go in your car. There were 12-inch subs you could buy to put in your car and make bass with. But those 12-inch subs would require, you know, a 3.5 to 5.5 cubic foot box to get good performance, to get good low end in a car. And when Steve came along with the original competition subwoofer, the original comp worked in a 1.75 cubic foot box. And I may be sad later. It worked in a 1.75 cubic foot box. So the original comp, even though it wasn't called a Solobaric, was really going down that path where how can I get a woofer to give me great, smooth, low, deep performance, but shrink that enclosure volume down. So Steve was kind of on that path of making woofers for cars before we made one that was really a landslide thing, which was the original Solobaric. And so come forward, we still make the Solobaric driver. The next iteration of it went to square format, and of course, bigger cone, required a little bit bigger box, things like that. But the whole premise is, how do I get great sounding bass out of a small enclosure? So now fast forward to today, we make Solobaric L7s, we make L7Rs, we make L7Ts, we make lots of speakers that kind of fit in that Solobaric family, and Solobarics kind of come to mean more square than it used to mean small box, which is okay. But if you look at the speakers that are on my right-hand side here, which is, you know, the downfiring, that's the TRTP, that's a 12-inch enclosure right there, and we'll get to it behind it. I've actually got a CWRT10, which hey, is actually the one we're going to give away tonight. These are very, very small enclosures. And the drivers that are working in these enclosures, like the 12 will work in as small as, I think, if I go to the website, I think the CRT12, Comp RT12 will work in as small as a 0.66 cubic foot box. And by working that small box, what I mean is you can put it in that small of an enclosure, use it within its rated power range, and you're going to get smooth, accurate bass all the way down to 40 hertz, and then some. It's going to definitely do that in a car, no problem at all. So the Solobaric idea and concept, the technology behind it, really lives on today, even in our thin is in, is the title of the show, thin is in, but our thin enclosures, whether they're the downfiring or the ones that go behind the seat of a vehicle. So I want people to understand that is that whole Solobaric concept, it's all about getting good, deep, low musical bass performance in a very, very small package. And obviously with the thin enclosures, that's the path we're going down, is those are very, very thin enclosures when we do that.